You have learned how to create and drop stored procedures. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add a parameter to your stored procedures. We typically use a parameter to pass a value to your stored procedure, but we can also use parameters to send values to the calling program. We'll look at that later. So here we're using the code for creating a stored procedure called getClients. Now let's create a new procedure called getClients by state. So underline by, underline state. Also, let's change the name here by state. We want this stored procedure to receive the name of a state and return the clients in that state. So here in between the parentheses, we need to add a parameter. We call it state and set its type to char of 2 in parentheses. Now this looks a little bit unreadable, so we can break this down into multiple lines like this. So after the create procedure statement, we add a pair of parentheses, and in between parentheses, we list all our parameters. If you have multiple parameters, we need to separate them using a comma, okay? Now, what is this char2 here? This represents a string of 2 characters, like CA for California or NY for New York. We also have varchar, which represents a variable length string, and this is useful for storing names, phone numbers, messages. These are variable length strings. Most of the time we use varchar, unless we know that our strings always have a fixed length. In this case, state, okay? Let me delete this comment. Now we'll look at data types in more detail when we talk about database design. All right, we added this parameter here. Now we need to add a where clause to filter the clients. Actually, I realized I made a mistake. This select statement should be after the begin keyword. I hope you caught my mistake. So let's go ahead and add a where clause where state is equal to state. Now this looks weird and our filter is not going to work because we're comparing the value in a column with itself. And of course, this condition is always true. So here we need to separate the state column from the state parameter we defined here. There are a few different ways to do this. Some people prefer to prefix or postfix their parameters with something like p underline state, as in short for parameter, or just p state with a capital S. Other people prefer to add a postfix like state underline param. I personally don't like this. I think this is a little bit verbose. So I prefer to use clean names for my parameters. And then instead, here I'm going to give an alias to our table, C. And then we qualify this column by this table alias, so c.state. It's quite clear that we're comparing the value in the state column with the state parameter we defined here. Now let's execute these statements. All right, our procedure is created. Let's take a look. I'm going to refresh the view. Here's get clients by state. So let's go ahead and call this procedure. Call get clients by state. I'm going to pass CA, as in short for California. And this returns the clients in California. Beautiful. Now, what if we don't supply a value? We get an error here because all parameters are required in MySQL. Here's your exercise for this tutorial. Write a stored procedure to return invoices for a given client. Call it getInvoicesByClient and give it the client ID parameter. Now for the type of this parameter, look at the type of client ID column in the invoices table. All right, here I'm going to create a stored procedure in MySQL Workbench. Let's call this getInvoicesByClient. Here we need to add the client ID parameter. What is the type of this parameter? Well, let's have a quick look at the type of client ID column in the invoices table. So that is an integer. An integer, as I told you before, represents a whole number. So back to our procedure, the type of this parameter should be int. Now I'll be right. Our statement, select everything from the invoices table where client ID equals to, well, let's give this table an alias and then qualify our column and complete the where clause. All right. And here's our semicolon. Now let's click on apply There you go. So MySQL generated all this stuff. Apply. Beautiful. We should have this procedure here. Get invoices by client. Let's call this procedure. Now we get this pop-up. We can pass client ID 1. And this returns the invoices for this client.